In my personal opinion, the Nikon 40mm f2 has to be one of the most overrated lenses on the market today. I don't necessarily understand the praise it gets. As I've been filming this review, I was hoping that I could see that my opinion overall was unjust. But as I kept using it in real-world situations, I realized that I may have been onto something. A lot of people have praised this lens online for giving film-like renders. We're going to go into whether or not this makes any sense and if it does get you any bit closer. So while this review is quite a bit late, as this lens was released in 2021, it's important to look now and just see how valid of an option it is these days when you have lenses like the Viltrox 40 f2.5, which is being sold at almost half the price. So this lens that I have here is actually the SE vintage version, and it looks a little bit different from the other one, which I will share a photo of now. And I didn't necessarily buy this because of the looks, I just found it on sale for 250 Canadian. However, this one was supposed to be paired with the ZF camera, so if you do have that camera, this will look really great for the retro styling. This is more of a classically designed lens. It has 6 elements in 4 groups, including 2 aspherical elements, and is coated with a super integrated coating. While this does have good flare suppression, it is nearly impossible to create any form of sunstars with this lens, unfortunately. One of my least favorite things with this lens is the colors that it produces. I find them to be quite sterile compared to something like this 28mm Voigtlander lens or my Typoc 50mm. I just find that the colors are so sterile, and I've been using this 28mm on my X-T1 on a recent vacation, which has a focal length of around 42mm, so I'm quite used to this focal length, and when shooting and comparing the images that these two lenses produce, the Nikon is really lacking, so I don't feel inspired to really shoot this lens often at all. Going now into what you can expect coming straight out of camera. This is with a basic Lightroom profile. Now this is with a color checker corrected image. Now I'm using the color checker corrected image with the Dehancer Portra 400 film simulation for these photos here. Moving on now, I want to compare some film images that I've shot in black and white with Kenmir 400 with images shot with this Nikon 40mm using the Dehancer HP5 film sim. Unfortunately, I don't have a Kenmir 400 film sim, but this should be close enough. Now going to how it compares between different apertures. I'm showing some examples now between f2 and f16. You can zoom on the image if you'd like to see how they differ from one another. The rear mount on this is actually the first plastic rear mount that I've ever purchased, which turns the opposite direction of what I'm used to, which is so weird. You can see right here, it's entirely made of plastic. And I can't say that I love that. Do I think it's gonna break? No. It feels quite sturdy, and I don't see much wear in taking it on and off the camera. And in my durability tests, it's held up quite well. When hiking with it, I banged it on a few trees and a couple rocks, but all seems quite well still. Ah, it slipped. When you mount this on a DX camera, it's equivalent to 60mm, which is a not so common focal length. However, it's still going to be quite useful, and I think it can be a pretty versatile lens in that sense. Convenience is often the make or break of what you bring with you every day. Having something that's so nice and portable and it can easily fit just even in a side pocket inside a small bag like this can be quite freeing. So I do appreciate how small it is, and being the weight it is, it really makes it nice and portable to put in your pocket. I've actually used this lens for the most part in my studio work. I've shot a lot of it just because the autofocus is so silent and reliable, and I think 40 millimeters looks pretty decent actually in this room. However, I've been switching over to a bit of a wider view as of recent, so I'm not sure I even really need a 40 millimeter anymore, and this Canon 16-35 I think fits a little more in line with what I'm going for currently. Looking at the minimum focus distance right now, it's not that bad. This is just f8. I think the bokeh is actually pretty nice. Shots like this actually make me wonder whether or not I should actually keep this lens or not. The real benefit over the Viltrox with this Nikon is the f2 aperture range. It can get quite bright, and for the size that it is, it can be a blessing in nighttime shoots. We're going to go through some of those videos now. The focusing motor on this is actually quite silent. It has an STM motor, and I find that I've never experienced as fast of autofocus as with this. And I've owned, for example, the A7C II before in the past, and I've shot with some newer Sony lenses, and the Nikon Z6III just locks on so rapidly, and I mean, it can be very consistent with autofocus in my personal opinion. And the manual focus ring on it is actually really nice. It turns quite smoothly, and it can be a little easy to turn though. So that's one of the blessings and downsides, is that it can feel nice and like it's smooth to turn, but you can bump it and you can kind of switch over into manual focus when you're wanting to autofocus the lens. So that's a plus and a downside with this, but overall I think the positives outweigh the negatives with that. One thing that shines best with this lens is its ability to work quite well with video. It has a pretty short focus throw, so when you're manually doing focus racks, it isn't too noticeable. It's very, very minimal, so I think it does a pretty good job for video work, especially with the fast and snappy autofocus on it. If I were to keep this lens, I would only be using it for video. This lens is really handy if you want something that's vintage and has good autofocus, but I think there are some downsides to it, and I just don't necessarily love the results that this produces. I've just been so used to shooting on such great quality glass that when I go over to a lens like this, I'm just not inspired to shoot. Even filming this review, thinking of the fact that I'll have to use this lens a bit, has just been kind of bleh to me. I'm not excited to necessarily review this lens. My suggestion, instead of buying this lens, is just save your money and buy a vintage lens with a dumb adapter online. They can be purchased for as low as $20 for the lens and as low as $10 for the adapter. I think that's a much better option than picking a lens like this. It's cool that they're trying to create a budget, more classic look in the lens, but I just think that this lens misses a lot of marks, which is unfortunate because I was hoping that I would enjoy this lens. Thank you everyone. I hope this video was of value to you. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.